John Kraft, second-class radioman. Applied for submarines, went to New London, Connecticut, sub school, and graduated from there in around February or March of '68. Reported aboard the USS Bang, SS-385 in New London, Connecticut. And we pulled out immediately, just like the destroyer went immediately to Westpac, we immediately went to the Mediterranean for operations for about 5 months. During that time, I missed a lot of what was going on in the United States as far as the assassinations of Martin Luther King, Bobby Kennedy, things like that. Became aware. The only memorable moment I remember thinking again is when you go into Greece. You're the only unit there, and then the 6th Fleet, which is the Mediterranean Fleet, comes in with their aircraft carriers and all their support ships, and all of a sudden the radio guard or the messages were being handled by the aircraft carrier. I had to go over there on a small boat to get messages, and I couldn't find the Radio Shack. And I watched sailors standing in line for food that was made in probably 500-gallon mixing bowls, and thank my lucky stars that I was on a small unit. Both units I was on, both the destroyer and the submarine, were World War II era, and I got to see, during my 4 years in the Navy, a wonderful time. The way the people from World War II in Korea fought. Anyway, went to the Caribbean on Operation Springboard in, that would have been early '69, and so forth. I made 3rd class in about 2 years, and then only 6 months took me to get 2nd class, E5. That was a big deal for me because I didn't have to stand topside watches in the cold and the drizzle of New London in the winter, and then could stand below decks watches. I had control of the Radio Shack when we went to the shipyards in 1969, Charleston, South Carolina, and was in charge of the rehabilitation of the equipment or making sure that it was done properly. As I was the lead radioman during that time, and we didn't have anybody senior to me, and so forth. 12 on and 12 off. Port and starboard just means every other shift you're on. Most people do it 8 and 8, but our little sub, when we went to the Mediterranean, we decided we liked 12 on, 12 off better. Gave you 4 hours of off time, if you will, read a book, play cards, rather than go to sleep, go to duty, eat somewhat. We just preferred it. Being in the Radio Shack on a submarine, you had to have a top secret clearance. And so we had our own little world. We were kind of away from the rest of the maddening crowd, if you will. The coffee pot in the galley was just aft of us, so there was unlimited coffee, and I smoked at that time, and that was not an issue. So when we went to the Mediterranean, we stopped at Rota, Spain. It's called in-chop. When you're going in, you're replacing a boat that's coming out of the Mediterranean. From there, we went to Rota, Spain, Piraeus, Greece, Naples, Italy, Toulon, France. My buddy and I, John Hazen, who was a yeoman, we took a week's leave, left, the ship was in Toulon about 2 weeks for resupply. We went up by train to Paris, spent a week in Paris. We ran out of money about halfway through, but we had already paid our passage there and back, plus our hotel, but the last few nights we were eating vin and fromage extensively. But it gave us a real nice view. We both liked art and museums, and spectacular in Paris. Paris was very cosmopolitan, extremely cosmopolitan. And also, I can't think of Isla Capri, and so forth. And then we worked with the 6th Fleet, again, mainly to provide training for the surface ships that were out there. I do remember that somebody fired a torpedo at us, a dummy, but I remember being down underwater and hearing the screws go pass overhead. That was interesting. I don't have claustrophobia. The only reason that you would have problems with a submarine is if your ears couldn't take the pressure, because the pressure, they pressurize the boat, it's 44 pounds of pressure for every 100 feet that you go down. So if you go down to 200 feet, they put pressure in the boat to equalize and also help the hull withstand pressures on the hull. And if you don't have issues like that, and they weed you out in sub school with tests for that, but also if you don't have claustrophobia, there's really nothing to it. The surface skimmers, the destroyers, are going to hate it, but because of psych tests that you have to take for submarine service, I'm not saying it's a better class of people, but it's a more stable type of individual that you'll find on submarines.